Okay, guys, so we're going to go through something real quick that you need to be aware of. And basically, one of the things that is a little bit of a worry here is that, and CNET and a bunch of other places basically did a report on this. The Social Security numbers were stolen in PayPal cyber attack. The bottom line is that about 35,000 users were affected by this credential taking situation. And so one of the things you can do if you're not sure if essentially you've been hit by this, where you've lost your financial information, you've lost essentially your basically your social security number to some sort of hacker, is that you can go ahead and send a letter to the Office of Inspector General in charge of the Social Security Administration and notify them that you'd like them to watch your account if you have a PayPal account and you're worried about your social security number. Now, remember, this is important. We're going to go through this real quick. I'm just going to read to you a little bit from the article. Bottom line, 35,000 PayPal users had their identity information stolen in December. So what happened is that it occurred between December 6th and December 8th of last year, which is interesting because this is like a 2-day affair where they were able to go ahead and hack this stuff. And then it was discovered essentially December 20th. In addition to social security numbers, usernames, addresses, dates of birth, and individual tax identification numbers. So that's your EINs for businesses, stuff like that. Those things all in some way, manner, or form were essentially compromised. They're saying that there's no indication that any financial information was stolen. But remember, guys, you have to think through what they're publishing, right? Because when you see something on the internet and it's like, oh, the information was taken, but, in the sense of capacity to have, but that financial information, there's no indication that was stolen. You know what I mean? Or that customers' accounts were misused, PayPal said. So PayPal is trying to say, like, even though we were hacked, we don't think anybody got anything in the sense of being able to use it, in that it was stolen or that it was misused. The company's payment system, they claim, was also not affected. In a statement released on CNET on Thursday, PayPal said that it had contacted affected customers and offered guidance on how to further protect their personal information. So and this is one of those things that I want you to take a moment with. And howdy, Minnesota. Howdy, Wendy Henschel, Pavrox, Deb Carter, Patrick Hardy. Howdy. Let's see. Yeah, indeed. Karen Bowl. Geez, trying to reduce stress, but damn near impossible nowadays. I recommend getting a dog and going to the beach. That's what I recommend. But here's the bottom line with this thing. Here's like the problem with this thing. So the prior sentence, and CNET is part of this, right? Because they publish this. They publish, like, if you read it with an attorney perspective, right? So CNET saying, okay, in a statement released to CNET on Thursday. So PayPal reached out to CNET. And PayPal said it had contacted affected customers and offered guidance on how to further protect their personal information going forward, which tells you that their personal information was affected, likely stolen, by essentially whoever hacked them. The company also reset the passwords of all of the affected accounts and is requiring their users to set new ones the next time they log in. So we know that information was violated. Okay. PayPal is also providing those affected with identity theft monitoring services through Equifax for the next 2 years. So PayPal is saying, hey, there's no indication that any of this information was stolen, even though for, essentially the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th, the 3 days where there was the hacking, and we didn't discover it really and do anything about it until the 20th. And now we're a month later and we're starting to see articles on it. So basically, literally a month later, literally a month later. So, the point, and what is this article's date? Let's see. It's Jan 19th, 2023, 12:39 p.m. We find out a month later. They find out, from the 8th into the 20th, essentially 10 days late. So then you got to be sitting there wondering, hey, wait a minute. It took them 10 days to figure out that, it actually more than 10 days, 12 days or whatever, to figure out that they've been hacked. Well, technically even more than that. It'd be essentially, from the 6th all the way to the 20th. So, it took them essentially a chunk of time there. And then they waited, and we didn't get a heads up, right, until basically a month later. But as released from PayPal, there's no indication that financial information was stolen or that customer accounts were misused. But, remember, it does take them, between 10 to 15 days to figure that out. So by the time we find this out, and by the time they do all that, they might have already been misused. But they changed all the passwords, and they've got Equifax working with people for the next 2 years. So, and this is this whole logic thing. Like, somebody in the prior comments of the other video was like, hey, with the whole, 2 presidents ago, when they had their law licenses, that they voluntarily gave them up so that they wouldn't have to continue to use them in the capacity, like when they were like, oh, they never lost them. I saw those reports. I don't believe that was situational. My belief when it comes to politicians who become president is that the rules are kind of like a black hole. The laws of physics, the laws of the United States don't apply as regular rules of law once you become president of the United States, right? The physics break down once you get inside the black hole. Like, it just, things change. You're treated differently. It just doesn't work the same way. So, for example, and I'm just using a hypothetical here. If these 2 individuals, right, who were community organizers, were essentially not using their law license, it's not hard to pay the fee and do the little bit of upkeep that's required to be able to use your, legal energy, knowledge, whatever, as an attorney to gain a higher wage to deliver a better product, right? It wouldn't unless there was a problem. Like, attorneys just don't regularly, you can't say ever, but for the majority, attorneys do not, especially from the schools they went to, just put it on involuntary, or the, where they change the status of it so that they can hop back on it at some point. Like, that's something retired people are doing, where they're like in the final years of retirement. So, when somebody says to me, they're like, hey, they've now discovered, a couple of years down the line, no, it was actually at the end of their presidency that the reports came up that no, everything was totally fine. Everything was totally good when it comes to, that particular licensure, their attorney card, their ticket, right, was stamped. Everything's good. I mean, you have to wonder, you have to think. And that's why, which is so interesting, because the last president is treated horribly, because normally, like, past presidents, they get the white glove treatment, right? It's just, everything is, we don't want to embarrass that president. But then with the last president we had, like, they'll drag him through the mud, completely different standards, and I don't even just mean the recent thing with the whole, like, hey, you found documents, and then, oh, did that, now this guy found out, and then, oh, and we're getting into these stupid arguments over, like, well, one was found in a garage, and one was found in an office, and one was found in the filing cabinet. Look, guys, my question to you about all of that stuff, and I know I'm a little off point here, but question: if we have all these procedures to resubmit these documents, right? If we have all these procedures to resubmit these documents, do any of them matter when there's only one person at the top of this country who should have the capacity to disclose information? Because, I mean, who else would disclose information at the highest levels? Whether it's something super duper top secret, ultra top secret, for his eyes only, whatever, right? But think about it. Who else is above the president? Nobody. So when the president pulls a document and stuffs it under his pillow, right? That's executive privilege at the highest level. So whether it's, the current president or the prior president, you got to ask yourself whether we have a system for reinserting the document or not. They have the ultimate end control on disclosing a document. It's like the CEO of a corporation. They have the ultimate end control on disclosing a document, right? And you could argue HIPAA law. You could argue, basically it's against America's interest for war reason, whatever. You could argue any one of those. But at the end of the day, let's call it like it is. It just is what it is. They have the ultimate power. You can't restrict that, because the bottom, you could say, oh, they have to turn it in before you could, but they still, while they're president, have the power to disclose, which means they pull it. It's auto disclosure in the sense of they have it within their capacity, even if it's not safe. All right. So, which leads into this stuff as well, which is the whole like releasing of information, the hacking of information. But when you think about it, the highest level, the highest person, president of the United, like if PayPal was the president of the United States, you could make, these HIPAA arguments, right? Disclosure of private information, etc. But that's within the president's capacity, right? Because they have the capacity to disclose things. Now you're going to argue, well, they can't disclose this or they can't disclose that. But then where does it end? When the top person at the chain of the government that oversees all this information, you know what I mean? Like that to me, that's I don't know. And then people go, well, when he took out the documents, he was only vice president. Okay, fine. But now he's president. They're sitting there disclosed. It is, were they probably something that could have hurt him? Sure. Once again, executive privilege. You ever notice that these presidents, they seem to wiggle waggle through all the legal stuff and just like survive. But like these, mega billionaire CEOs and yada yada, they're getting hammered sometimes. Well, must be good to be president of the United States because, being the president of Walmart, Google, Microsoft, whatever, that's still not top, that's not top shelf. Top shelf is president of the United States. So in a credential stuffing attack, cyber criminals bombard online accounts with combinations of usernames and passwords, often stolen in previous data breaches, in an attempt to access as many accounts as possible. That's a big reason why cybersecurity experts say consumers should always enable a two-factor authentication whenever possible. The security measure requires a second form of authentication, like a fingerprint or a code sent to your user's phone, blah, blah, blah. You guys know what that is. People should always have a long, unique password, blah, blah, blah. All right, here's the bottom line with this stuff, with the whole problem with the social security number situation. First and foremost, the social security number was created way back in the day when, the amount of, numbers to this thing made sense. That was a unique identifier back then. We realistically should have a digital identifier that is much more complex. But we don't do that. We should, but we don't do that. And here's, I guess, the government passed rules, after 2000 about this true ID situation. Like, how do we prove that it's you? How do we digitally protect you? And we're moving closer to that, which is really awesome. But this stuff, like, the social security numbers getting stolen by somebody who normally sells drugs and then is used by the drug dealer's handler to go ahead and borrow money against federal government programs, or special mortgage programs. And then all of a sudden, this person who has no idea that their identity has been stolen, right? Because that's what it comes down to, your social, your birthday, whatever. That's just all identity stuff. Finds out that they've got a $130,000 loan against their name. And then they've got to prove that they didn't take it out, and go through that whole thing. So anyways, the point of this video is to just security, right? This happens all the time. And, the funny thing about it is that even when they get fined, even when there's like a quasi punishment that happens to them, the reality of this thing is that all of our social security numbers have been stolen many times over. And remember, this is only because they had to report that. But think about when the government gets hacked and there's a potential problem with releasing that information. And, essentially that thing of releasing that information could potentially be, missed or not produced as a part of the reporting requirements. I'm just saying. I mean, look, you've seen the government handle reporting requirements. When it works out, it works out. And the best part of it is, God, and I love it. When the government handles reporting requirements, lower level stuff, it's done on this time, on this schedule, on this timeline. It must fit inside the docket, right? That's okay. And that's a good thing. But have you ever noticed at the more executive levels that the release of that information, right? The release of the, oh, whoops, we screwed up, is so well timed. it comes out for like a moment, and then some massive, huge story comes out that just clobbers it, that just totally destroys it. And I mean, they've had to play that game with some pretty serious stories, some pretty serious island trip stories, if you know what I mean. And it's been really interesting to watch how they do it. Like, if you were to say like, okay, who are the best at, and it's manipulating release date data, right? Something bad happens, they're supposed to tell you, it involves your privacy, it involves something that's significant to you. Why do they release it so late in the game? Why is it that when it's released, it pops up on, your news thing, and then 30 seconds later it's gone because 5 other things replace it? And I guess what that comes down to for me is that the future of everything from Social Security benefits to essentially voting to essentially, all these different things should be linked into some sort of system that's far better than what we have right now. There are, and one of the weird things that people use as an argument with me, which I think is so weird. I think it's just so incredibly weird when people argue this with me. They're like, well, homeless people can't vote. And you know what the weird thing is? It's always, look, and I'm not trying to make like a political thing here or political statement, but you ever notice that like the people that are making that statement are always on the left side? And the left side people that always make that statement to me don't actually work with the homeless. So somebody like me who's like in the middle, who works with the homeless every single week, every single day, sits there and it's just a facepalm moment. It's just and I get that like that clenched kind of brow. I just get frustrated because I know they're the biggest shit artists that are out there, like the biggest BSers, because they act like they know a group of people, but they have no idea how that group of people actually works. Homeless people have more phones than any other group of people because they lose them all the time. They sell them all the time. 3 weeks later, boom, they got another one. One homeless facility, they go to another homeless facility. They go to one Samaritan Resource group. They go to another homeless coalition group. They work it. They work it to get the cell phones. Most of the cell phones, in fact, I mean, we're running out of, look, the days of like people having flip phones where like, you flip it open like a Zippo lighter, like you're so cool. Those days are over. Those days are over, people. Homeless people have, phones just like we do. I mean, they're not as fast. The internet's not as good. They're restricted in how many texts you can send, how many minutes you have on them, stuff like that. But they have the same types of phones that we do. And they're not sitting there with a flip phone. Okay. If you have a flip phone, then like you did that to yourself. You did that to yourself. There's nobody is, look, you did that to yourself. So the point I'm trying to make here is that, remember, it started with cool pads. You remember the cool pads? And the cool pads came out and they're like this little crappy phone that was like a little like Samsung-esque type of thing, and people were able to use it and they weren't great, but that was the start. Now, these phone companies, it's like, okay, what's the and the cheapest phone type that you're really going to be able to get, in mass production right now? It's not the flip phones. It's not. Those are on the way out in a huge way. I mean, there's, the production of that model is gone. It's going to be, and it is cheaper to make these other types of phones, which are just your classic touchscreen phones. So to me, saying, hey, homeless people aren't going to be able to vote if we have a system on the phone where they can, link it to an account, a true ID, right, which is that government system. That people make the argument that the homeless just aren't going to be able to vote, that the homeless are the people that aren't going to be able to vote are the people who either can't or choose not to. There's a lot of choose not to people out there. There's a lot of, old blue collar type people where they're like, I've been tiling for 1,000 years and I don't know how to use a phone. I'm not going to use the internet ever. Those people are the ones that we have to worry about when it comes to not being able to vote. Or those people who just can't use a phone for any purpose due to disabling impairments. But that is a very, very, very small percentage that we can figure out how to help, that we can figure out how to, cater the system to. So the point is this: we need a better system all the way around. We need a better, more complex social security number. We need basically something that is far more restrictive upon entry and that can be controlled essentially by phones checking phones on a much larger network, right? Because just having one financial institution being like, yeah, we're the checkpoint, that's crap. You have to have everybody's system checking everybody's system. That's the way it's supposed to happen. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and catch up with you guys. I have one more video to go ahead and do. I will catch up with you a little bit later, but 5 minutes, I'll be back. Now, this next video is the big video. This next video is the one where I give you a little bit of a history lesson about Ponzi schemes, how they started, what happened, where they're at, which is the largest. And the funny thing is that the largest Ponzi scheme in America is not what I thought it was. I thought Social Security benefits, the trust fund system, I thought that was it. Because, that's bigger than Bernie Sanders, or not Bernie, than Bernie Madoff. That's like the biggie. I thought, wow, Bernie Madoff. No, we're going to go through that, though. It's going to be a really, really cool video. I'm excited about it. I will see you guys back in 5 minutes. Remember to link back to the channel. Thank you so much for being a part of the video, and I'll be right back. All right. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.